was that was September. In October, I entered the pitch competition. They didn't accept it, so I was like, well, this is not such a great idea, right? And so Oprah Winfrey had done a trailer for A Wrinkle in Time. Mm-hmm. And that movie was all about a young girl who had lost her dad, and she was going through some emotional things, and she became a little bit of a bully, and she was being bullied, right? So it aligned with the mission of Love Laces. So I said, I know what I'm going to do. So I picked up my idea back up because I had put it down, got discouraged. Picked it back up after the trailer, and reached out to the manufacturer. They sent me a prototype within 7 days, and this is in China. 10 days later, 10 days later, they sent me the prototype. 2 weeks later, I had my product at my house, 1,000 laces produced in all different colors. And in March, I premiered the movie A Wrinkle in Time for my launch party. And we had a packed house at Imagine Theater. And we've been going ever since.
Wow.
So I created the laces for my son, and I thought I was doing something cool. Like, this is a cool little product that people can wear and remind them. And as it turns out, a year later, because that was in 2018, so in 2019, we celebrated 1 year. We've been in 9 different schools because kids have, and parents have began to write emails and send letters about their experience of either being bullied or getting bullied, and wanting help. And I'm like, oh Lord, going to school for teaching, not counseling. And so just knowing how this product is just symbolic of something, but the bigger picture is people need and want help.
Yes.
And it just, my whole life as an educator just led up to this experience. Right. And so in October, we're actually hosting a cyberbullying conference at Cobo Hall, and Facebook and Instagram are looking to partner with us a whole year later.
Oh, wow. Okay, we got one.
And so for me, and I know you talk about God, so we can talk about God. When you align with what God has you to do, then everything just does what it needs to do. Yep. And so it's scary because, people are coming to you with some very serious things, right? And you don't always feel equipped to actually give the right information. But I do it, I speak from my heart and I speak from experience. And I think there's no better feedback you can give somebody than that. And so when we met and you talked about your experience and the affirmations and the I am, I learned that the I am is the God in you. Yes. So every time you say I am, you're recognizing the God in yourself. And so we put I am in front of everything we do. So this whole connection is like,
orchestrated.
Yeah, right. And so that brings me to the gold table.
You made it. Look, Mama made
it.
Oh my God. Okay, y'all, I got chills right now. Yeah. You just don't know. And, I think you hit on something so pivotal because oftentimes we are afraid to step out there because we're looking at our inhibitions, our limited abilities. And when we take a step back and realize that it's not about us, it's about, going back again, inspiring others. So I am so thankful that you, and even, okay, so your nerdy gangster moment, because when she talked about how the pitch contest and they didn't accept it and you put it down, but you didn't stop there. I mean, just think how many lives could at this point not be impacted if you had to just said, okay, I'm discouraged, I'm done. Yeah, this, moving on, but you didn't. You got nerdy gangster about it. Oh my God! So thank you
for
what you're doing, and please keep us posted because that thing at Kobo that's gonna be just awesome.
I received
that. oh my God! So just kind of taking what you're doing and because it's ultimately about finding that need, whatever that need is. And I know you, Robert, you have done just that with your organization of just really supporting those who have gone through domestic violence situations, which we know that is, a very serious situation. So just kind of tell us about your organization.
I started up about a year ago. This all came to fruition after my aunt passed, the same after my aunt. My aunt owned a series of group homes and helped youth come up, and she always wanted to give back. Anyways, when I came back home here, I had literally the next day a friend get murdered, and I went into a deep depression. And I came out of that a couple months later with this insight, like, you know what, like I want to do what I want to give back some way. And I can't explain it any other way than like just really having a vision. And and for years I was blessed. I'm not from this country. I was adopted in a third world country. I was brought here by Americans in '92, and I was blessed when I was 17 to have a mentor that turned me on to the I am statements, that turned me on to the power of positive thinking, to the Zig Ziglars, to the Think and Grow Rich books, to all of that. And so here I was in college, and at this time at 17, and then I get turned on to this philosophy, I guess you would say at the time. So since then, it's been I've been pounding that in my head. So then when this happened, I'm like, you know what, like. Still, even in 2019, there is no place, there's no school, there's no, like, you're not learning this in college or nothing, about the power of positive thinking, about the law of attraction, about just how your thoughts really, they do formulate your world and your life. And then, so then, one thing that always urged me, and I think I got this from my grandmother really, and my mother, I was always raised just to have this super high level of respect for women. All the way down to opening the door, like everything. So when it comes to the abuse and then the children, I'm like, you know what, like the abuse and the families that they have, they're so stuck in that moment and in that world that that's what they're fixated on. They're not even thinking of goal setting or okay, how am I going to get out of here? A lot of them don't even get out of it, let alone what the kids and children are experiencing growing up in that atmosphere. So I was like, okay, this is like divine. We all have spoke here, and it was just like, you know what? This is my passion. I want to teach them. I want to give back to this community. I want to teach the youth in that community, and also the adults, and give them like, hey, this is how you move forward with your find your purpose. Yes. This is how you start and you set a goal. Stop and sit back and nothing's too big. Yeah. Like you had stated before. So many times people look at their own circumstances, they look at their bank accounts, they look at what's going on in their lives, and they feel that they can't empower somebody else. They feel that they can't do that, can't do this because of whatever, debt, bills, whatever the case may be. And that's just not the case. Even in all through Proverbs it's taught, all in the Bible, even if you name other religious books, the Torah, the Tao Te Ching, all this, it is get back into yourself, get into your element with God, the I am.
The I am.
And put that out there, whatever it is that you want, and what you articulate, and what you put out into the universe, it's going to come back.
Yeah. Reciprocal law.
Yeah.
Right, and be grateful for what you have, and then also give. So that's where this passion has kind of come from me, and then seeing, where I came from. I'm from Panama, and I grew up in a dictatorship, and the things that I see that happen here in the States and things with children and also adults and homeless and things like that. It's a whole nother level in a third world country. And so it was like, when I was able to get inspired at 18, and then this isn't my first business venture. I've always had like this entrepreneur spirit, that I wasn't going to work for somebody, wanted to do something else. But I will say this is the first vision that I've had that I'm just so passionate about. I'm just like, man, I got this. I got this. I got this.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, you have to talk about it right now. So,
It's ready. It's ready.
Here we go, girl.
Better like.
But it's like what you're talking about, like talking from the heart and stuff like that. It just, it's so true. And it's knowledge that honestly, I can't believe that it has not been like out there, like actually implemented in schools.
Yeah.
So, some things that I'm doing, and like currently right now we're a year in, so I'm able to provide like a nice stay at a hotel for an evening, meals and clothes for a family.
Wow.
But ultimately, like, I want to include beast therapies in that. I'm looking to start like cosmetic lines, and I've contacted Avon and Almay and things like that. But to have like a cosmetic line that is an I am and has like I am beautiful, I am, and this is amazing though. It's like happening at this table because it all comes back to God, because I am is God.
He's the great I am.
And amen to that, sister. And honestly, we're all strangers at this table, and it's all coming back to that.
Yep.
It's amazing. It just is.
Oh.
So,
wow.
Anyway, so that's where we currently are at. I'm looking to our next step is I've applied for some grants to get infrastructure. I'm established here in Michigan. I'm also already established in California. One of my main things too is if you're in that situation, and like stalking is a huge part of that situation.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes, like a lot of times, you can't just go to another county. If you got a real like somebody on your, excuse my French, ass, they're going to manipulate the system. They're going to find you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, what's the best way to get to the other side of the country, baby?
Right.
And 9 times out of 10, those individuals are going to have those resources to be able to be like, okay, bam, okay, I know they went to Michigan, or if you're in California, okay, I know they went to California, and be in that environment. And then I want to bring therapies into those environments. Me growing up in Panama, I had oceans on both sides of me. The ocean and the water are something that is just such a place for me for peace and serenity, and yes, and I want to be able to share that. So here in Michigan, I'm thinking maybe more like lakes or farming or something like that as a therapeutic value, and then I also want to ultimately teach them like the lessons of entrepreneurship as well. I also am I have a CDL. I was driving semi for years before I started working at a Ford Motor Company. So like just give them some direction. I have friends that own other companies and things like that as well. So hey, you know what? Teaching you how like these goals and set these goals. Okay, well maybe like college definitely is not for everybody. So okay, bam. Okay, well, try this out, try that out, and being able to do it like just like getting somebody to the other side of the country, being able to make a phone call and be like, hey, I got this person, I got this family, I send them out. Can I get a week of your time to show them these ropes, to maybe this is going to spark something in them, or that might be what they want to do. So, yes, that is right.
That's it, man.
That is so hard. You guys give me chills. But I mean, like when you said, because when you're going through that situation, like you like the positivity and the laws of attraction, you're not thinking about none of that.
No.
You're in survival mode.
Yes.
Like, and especially if you have children.
Absolutely.
So I just think it's awesome that not only are you trying to provide a safe haven, but also to provide that therapeutic aspect that they need, because it's really kind of a renewing of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're taking it a step further, because once you do that, then, I mean, you have to be able to survive. You have to be able to sustain yourself. And so you man, give me a high five. Because, I mean, you just got, boom, you got all the points, covered. And so I just
thank you.
Thankful.
Thank you.
Indeed.
Awesome. Yeah. Man, this is a powerhouse gold table talk right here.
It's beautiful.
And it's just flowing, because as I'm listening to you, Tyra, I'm thinking about you, because okay, so he's providing this safe place, whether it's residential, whether it's here, California, whatever. And that's kind of what you do in terms of just real estate. And when you talk about empowerment, I mean, we know that ownership, particularly home ownership, I mean, that is the foundation for financial freedom. I mean, that is the cornerstone. And so you are helping people to realize that. And not only that, but then you kind of taking it a step further with some little girl power on the side and empowering women. So talk to us about that.
I'll start off with the real estate. So I've been in the business for going on 15 years.
Wow.
But just maybe 5 years ago, I kind of took it a step further, where I stepped out on my own and got my broker's license. So now I own a real estate brokerage and also property management. Mm-hmm. So back to what we were talking about earlier about inspire, and that's just always been my ultimate goal, is just to inspire people, to just not always think that you always have to work for somebody, and to, get to the point where you're able to work for yourself and own your own thing. And I just feel like now it's much easier for us than before to do things on your own. So I just kind of took that leap, started my own brokerage, and now I have about 5 agents that works under me in my brokerage, and then my property management firm. We manage about 115 properties now. So yeah, the whole thing
just
really.
Right.
Whatever. That's
good. Yeah, the whole thing really is just, to me, is for other people to be inspired by it and feel like, okay, well, she's doing that, I can do it too. And and that's kind of my passion as far as being a business owner in that aspect. But also I started I've always been very passionate and strong about women empowerment, because I just feel like it's, of course, a male-dominated world, and I just feel that we as women have a voice.
Yes.
And so I started this thing called Team Women Empowerment, and how it started is, since I was so passionate about that, it started on Facebook, because I would always I would always see my friends and different people going through situations with the guys that they're with, and then even myself, just coming up and you experience heartbreak. So my outlet has always been writing, So I've always just wrote. Even when I was little, I was writing books. Or when I got older, I got more into poetry, so I started writing poetry. But that was my outlet. So that's how I dealt with it. But then as I got older, my friends and different people, they would go through different things with guys. Some of my friends have been in abusive relationships, just different situations you go through, being cheated on, whatever the case, and they it affects their self-esteem.
Yes.
So I just got tired of my friends being affected by that. So I'll start putting like little quotes on Facebook just to kind of uplift them, and then after the quote, I'll put hashtag Team Women Empowerment. And I felt like it just wasn't reaching as many people as it should, because I wanted it to be like kind of like with your shoelaces. When they get down, you said they put their head down, they'll look at their shoelaces. Well, I wanted them, whenever they go on Facebook or whatever, they might see a quote or just see something that just helps them get through that moment.
Yeah.
So I decided, okay, well, I'm gonna start a Facebook page. So I started a Facebook page called Team Women Empowerment, just in hopes of it reaching a broader audience. And on the page, I would just, put all kind of different quotes on there, uplifting things, inspirational things, things for women that might be in domestic violence relationships, things for women that might be suffering from insecurities, things for women that might be overweight, and just different things. And I ended up putting like one post out there. I think it was about like an overweight transition. Someone went from being overweight to losing a lot of weight, and it grabbed a lot of attention like overnight. So in the page ended up having like 29,000 likes. So it reached like a huge audience, and that was like my whole goal, is to reach a broader audience. So now that's my passion. It's called Team Women Empowerment on It's a Facebook page, and I'm hoping to take it another step further and do more with it. But I've been doing that since 2013, and it's just a way for people just to, specifically women, just to uplift them, motivate them, and encourage them. And yeah, that's pretty much. That's pretty much it.
No, that's Nerdy Gangsta. People giving their stories of how you've impacted them.
Yeah, I have. I've gotten like several messages. Sometimes I've had people ask, and it reminds me of what you said. Like I'm not meant to handle like this type of stuff. I've gotten messages where people were actually in abusive relationships or things like that. So I've even had to like research different areas, different things in their area to find, and suggest that they reach out. But yeah, I have. So. And yeah, like ultimately, like I said, it's meant to inspire, and just help people that might be in a bad situation.
So you covering all facets, like different situations that they may be going through, and just from a self-esteem perspective.
It's all about confidence.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, we just like killing it right now. All ties together, and then with that, as you're helping and empowering these women, there's certain things that they need, like you talked about, giving them, job skills and things like that. But depending on what type of situation they're in, they may need some legal.
Right. That's automatic, really.
They might, yeah. So, with that, we have a Nerdy Gangsta lawyer in the house. And I'm just going to say this because the example I always give of a Nerdy Gangsta, because when I think about it, I always think of a lawyer, because I always say, obviously they're nerdy because they passed the bar. But when you want them to get in their courtroom and advocate on your behalf, they got to get gangsta, and you want them to get gangsta because you want them to win your case. So Miss Alexandria over here.
I love it.
Tell us about how you are being nerdy gangster.
Oh my goodness. So my field is parallel to Tyra's in that it's male dominated. And so you have to be even more so of a nerdy gangster for women, because even though, and it's an interesting phenomenon, so there are more women in law school, but the practice is not reflective of that because most women, they leave the practice. So work-life balance issues, things like that. So when I graduated, I worked in a firm and I was the only woman of color. And so it definitely was very difficult, but I also saw how male-dominated it was. So when you go to court, it's like, oh, are you the secretary? Are you the paralegal? You know, they never, even though I would be suited too, it's like they never looked at me as like the attorney. And so you have to have a level of resilience in that. So I worked in a firm for a few years, and then I stepped out onto my own. So that required a whole other level of nerdy gangster. And I practiced predominantly in the criminal realm, which is even more male-dominated. And so it's challenging. But I thought about, you know, I told you I posted this status to Facebook when we had talked. And I was recently nominated as a super lawyer, as a rising star. And it's the first time that I've been nominated. And it made me think back to law school, to how I wanted to be a litigator, but I had a fear of public speaking, and how I learned that it's a faith walk. And so life is a marathon, but for us, you know, I'm a runner. So when you go to run a race, they give you the race map. But for us, it's a faith walk. You're running a marathon, but you don't have the map. And you just have to trust and have the faith that this is your purpose. And so for me, it just gave me chills because I realized I could have missed out. You know, if I would have been buried in that fear of like not wanting to speak and worried about what people would think about me and how they would look at me, you know, I would have lost out on all of this. And I remember my pastor at a sermon once, and he said, when you don't fulfill your purpose, it's not about you, it's about all the others that are affected. And so I realized even more, it's like you have to take those steps. Like that's what being a nerdy gangster is. It's like, I don't know the path, but I have faith that whatever it is going to be purposeful. Not just for me, but for others. And so through the firm, I work with Wayne State and other local universities. And I mentor particularly young women. I have some men that come through for internships, but what I do and what my purpose has been is I operate in the gifts and talents. So I'm going to help you identify your gifts and talents so that you can operate in this realm. And I focus on women because I see so many women leave the practice. So I show them what it's like, that work-life balance. So I had a baby a couple years ago. So they saw me, I'm bringing my breast pump to court. Like, this is what we're doing. Wow. You don't have a room to accommodate me, you're going to make a room. You know, so they saw what it was. Yes. And so you have, like Tyra said, you have to have confidence in, like, what this walk is. And so I help them identify those gifts and talents and have the confidence to be in this. I'm like, you can do this. So when you go to law school and take the bar and graduate and you work in some firm, it might be difficult, but you can do this. And so it takes, like I said, a great level of nerdy gangster, but it's been very, very fulfilling, very fulfilling. And so through this, just pouring into, people, young people, but particularly young women, to raise up just a great generation of young lawyers.
Wow. Wow. And
well,
wow.
Check, please. Check, please. Wow.
Oh, my God. Like,
that's amazing.
That's what this is all about. And what I hear just echoing from everyone is that, this was, my inhibition, but when I realized that it wasn't about me and I stepped out there, what difference I made. And I think what I really, really love is the fact that the give back, that you're reaching back, you're mentoring others, to say, you know what, come on, let me pour into you. And I think too often people, kind of like, I got mine, I'm successful, I'm driving my Benz or whatever, but you're giving back. And I just think that is phenomenal.
Well, I just think so for me, a few years ago, my mom passed to cancer. And she was so phenomenal, but she was an I am person. She would tell me, you are great, you're wonderful, you can do everything. But everybody doesn't have that.
True.
So when you're out there and you realize everybody doesn't have that, and so for me, I pour into these young students and interns that I have, like I said, to pull out their gifts and talents, because I had a mother that prayed for me. So when I told her I wanted to go out on my own, to open my own firm, what she said, I already knew. I was waiting for you to figure it out. But see, I came from a praying mother, so everybody doesn't have somebody like that for them.
Wow.
Okay, I'm just speechless right now. Oh my God. Mike. Help me. Damn, Mike. Oh my God. I mean, so Mike is a singer. I'm not going to say he's a singer. But you talk about that reach, and you talk about, with your Facebook and reaching the masses. And that's what he does. But not only that, and what you were talking about in stepping out and starting your own firm, and your mom saying, I was just waiting on you. With Mike, I mean, he has this super gift of song. But then, not only that, but he discovered that he also has this gift in terms of acting. And just talk a little bit about that and just the impact that you've had kind of in both realms.
Well, first I want to say that this is very inspiring.
Yeah,
this group of people, this situation is just phenomenal. And I remember when we were in the office and you were going through your situation, and just the peace of God and the grace that God gave you to handle your situation was inspiring to me. Whether you know that or not, just to see you showed up to work, fussed at me a couple times, get this work done. No, but just to be able to persevere, to push through, to still be efficient, to still produce, it's just amazing. And I remember early on when you were talking about the whole idea of Nerdy Gangster and being a Nerdy Gangster. And really what that means to me is, like you said, being calculated, but also having courage.
Yes. And
courage goes back to what you were saying about having faith. You know what I mean? Because you can't see the road that's in front of you, but you know that it's preordained and by God and orchestrated by God. So for my journey, I really wanted to hang my hat on just being a singer, church singer in my local assembly, praise and worship leader, singing at the women's conferences and all of these different events locally. And then I was actually singing, and an independent artist was sitting in the audience, and she said, while I was singing, she said, I want you to sing for me or with me. I'm like, what? You know? So I partnered with her, and as you know, like when you're around people that you see all the time doing their thing, you think that you're gonna just do that, and that's just gonna be another thing on your plate. Well, she was fortunate enough to, she's still independent, but she has global reach.
Wow.
What I mean by global reach is one of the songs that I had, she's on her third album now. And one of the songs that I had the pleasure of singing background for has over 6 million views on YouTube. And we've been able to travel the world singing the gospel of Christ. And it's very uncomfortable to be like, hey, you got your passport? We're going to the Bahamas. And it's like, okay, you know. So it's a real testament to just God's reach and how that a message that she came up with, being in a bad relationship, and it came to her in her car, can inspire over 5 or 6 million people across the world. Like we went to Turks and Caicos to do a concert, and when we got out into the area, we were walking to our cars from the airport, and there was a group of children singing her song. And that right there just opened my eyes to how far God's reach is. And so through her ministry, I actually started to get connected to other artists, national recording artists, other independent artists, television opportunities. And I was fortunate enough to be selected. I was one of 8 people that was selected to sing with the Detroit Symphony Orchestra in 2015 for their New Year's Eve extravaganza. And we were doing we were the chorus for a American Idol alum. And we were able to do that. And after we did that, that was probably, I was done. I traveled, I sang with the orchestra. I'm getting ready to take up crocheting or something else to spend my time. And I got an email and said, hey, we saw you on this program. Would you be interested in doing Dreamgirls? Never thought about acting, it's like not my thing. I was very comfortable with what I was doing because I was, what they say, I'm booked and busy. You know what I'm saying? So I was so booked, I had no room for anything else on my plate. I had 3 kids, and it was just like, no, I passed on that. But then what happened was, after a couple weeks, I was like, if God would have never brought that to me if he wasn't going to equip me to be able to do it. So I reached out to the director and I said, hey, I missed out on the audition, but if you want me to like walk across the stage holding a notebook or something, I would do anything. It was like, well, unfortunately, we casted the play. So I'm like, okay, well, cool. And then I prayed about it. Maybe 2 weeks later, he said, you know what? We have an opening. Come in. And that kind of started my journey with acting. That was in 2016. And in Dreamgirls, I was a part of a major ensemble cast. I didn't have a lead role at the time. I was just happy doing whatever. And I had probably 7 or 8 different roles in that one play alone. And it just birthed something in me to want to do more, to see the joy on people's faces when we would sing and they encouraged me to dance, even though that's not my thing. And it was just like one of those things where I started to ask God, well, what is this? And God was basically saying that I've given you so much. I've given you so many gifts. It would be a shame for you to limit that to the church house. And I don't want you to get obligation and assignment mixed up. Because a lot of times, especially for me being a singer, you do it out of obligation to your ministry, to your, to the family, church family, where God has called you to do bigger exploits and just really to stretch your faith. It's not real faith unless it's been tested. Yeah. So me singing and dancing at the same time was a major test. And I got to give glory to God for that, because it was not but His grace that I was able to, dance and sing at the same time. But what that showed me was that this world, it's a big world out here, and it's a lot more that we can do. And so I took that to heart, never knew what opportunities were next. I completed Dreamgirls. We did 16 sold-out shows, which was unheard of. It was in Royal Oak, and the theater that we did it in had never done an all-black cast production. And it was the biggest seller of their history to date. 16 sold-out shows. And so I started getting calls to do other things. And I was fortunate enough in 2017 to do 4 different plays, which is a huge undertaking on top of working and answering Shelby's emails and taking care of my children, still being a praise and worship leader, still going to soccer games and bowling and all of that stuff. I did Lady Day at Emerson Bar and Grill, which was a one-woman show about Billie Holiday, and I played a bartender. Then I did Perilous Times, which is in Detroit. That's like a major foundational gospel play. We did that at the Fisher Theater. Then I did Sister Act, the musical, and that was out by Port Huron. And then I did A Raisin in the Sun. And I was very strategic, going back to the Nerdy Gangster thing, just very strategic, and I wouldn't settle on just, hey, you can act. You have natural instincts. Why don't you do this play? You know what I'm saying? Like, why don't you just do this small production? And I was never chasing a big mainstream production, but I wanted to do things of quality and integrity and things that would challenge me, not only emotionally, but just to challenge my ability. And then I took a year off. 2018, I did absolutely nothing. Only thing I did was sing, because that stream or river resource was still flowing. And I did a live recording in Washington D.C. I did a lot of different television appearances. I was able to sing background for American Idol winner Candace Glover. I mean, just like different opportunities. I never know what I'm doing next. It's just walking by faith and not by sight. And there was a Canadian production company that wanted to do Dreamgirls again. Well, they did it in Canada, and they wanted to bring it to Detroit. And I was cast in that. But because of, getting things across the border, the heightened security, we weren't able to do it. But the directors said, so that faded out August of 2018. The director inboxed me on Facebook in October and said, we're doing the biggest production that we've ever done. Have you ever heard of The Wiz? I was like, dude, what? So he said, I would like you to try out to be the Cowardly Lion. And I said, okay, and I went in and got the part. We started rehearsals in November, and we just completed it in March. And it was like the most fulfilling situation that I've ever been a part of. I got to wear a prosthetic mask. I had hair for the first time in years. I was happy about that. I'm like, can I keep the wig? I got some more work to do. And it was great because, speaking about inspiration, we were able to inspire the theater community, especially for African Americans in Windsor, is very, very small. And through this production, we were actually able to say, hey, there are stories that we are a part of that you can be included in. Yes. So the director was big on inclusion. He was big on just having diversity across the stage. And it was just a big opportunity for African Americans in Windsor. Mm-hmm. So how could I not be a part of that? Wow. And it's just, to God's glory that I was able to do that and see that through. And I was even able to ask my girlfriend for her hand in marriage in front of a sold-out audience in Windsor.
On the yellow brick road.
On the yellow brick road. Lion costume, mask on, everything. And she had to look in my eyes to really see if that was me, because I was not I was the lion there. But, it's just God's grace and his reach is just immeasurable. And when you can take a small piece of that and go out and inspire somebody else, a child that's in the audience that wants to see us on the stage, a young boy that it may not be popular to be on stage, to be in a musical, to be taken seriously. It's just those type of things that make me feel like, you can still be a gangster dressed as a lion. Lions
are gangsters.
You can still have the courage to do that, to step out on faith and let God do the rest. Wow. Faith to me is the means of currency. Like money is currency in the world. Faith is the vehicle for God to get involved. And when you have a measure of faith, he's not going to move unless faith is involved. You know what I'm saying? So you got to have that measure of faith. It don't have to be, they say faith of a mustard seed, you know, and God is going to multiply that thing and exceed your expectations, just like what we've heard all over this table. God took a little bit of that faith and made it something beyond what you even thought that you could do with that. And that's gangster.
The gangster line.
Okay. Once again, I'm speechless. I mean, I work with Mike, and I've seen him. You know, he like, oh, I got this, I got that, and just to see, just like you said. I mean, and you didn't have an agent, did you? I mean, they were like just emailing you, like inboxing you. Yeah. It's like, wow. Mm-hmm. So I think just the if nothing else that we got from today, it is that when, like I think you said, that faith is just that currency. So when we say yes, finally. So sometimes he's got to kind of nudge us a little bit and have a praying mama or somebody to, you know, just say, you can do this, you know, and to not only do it, but see how what you're doing is having an impact, because it's not enough just to just do it for the heck of doing it, but to see how you're inspiring. And I'm just going to kind of close with this, and I'm going to bring it back to what we initially talked about in that Nipsey Hussle quote. The highest human act is to inspire.
That's good.
Yeah. And that's what everyone at this table has done. And so I just want to say, just continue doing what you're doing. And I want to hear like feedback. I'm sure we will from the video, but you know, how somebody, you know, looking at this, hearing this is going to be inspired, is going to be impacted. So we got to raise our glasses to the Nerdy Gangstas. Clink, 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 clink. And that's a wrap.